Whether you want to throw it into the fire or hold an epic ceremony for it, Season 2 of The Rings of Power has come to an end, which means there's lots to talk about. And with the show kind of doing its own thing in terms of creating lore and taking liberties with the source material, there are many ways this thing could go and new theories to discuss. In this video, we'll be going over the biggest questions for Season 2, its connection to the books, and where Season 3 might be headed. So grab some lembas bread and make sure to like and subscribe, we have a lot to get to. Season 2 is all about the forging of the Rings of Power, more specifically how the great elven smith Celebrimbor was deceived by the Dark Lord Sauron into crafting the Great Rings. 3 to the elves, 7 to the dwarf lords, and 9 to men. These rings would allow Sauron to bend the will of its wearer. As the wise elf Círdan says,
"In Sauron's hands they could work an evil beyond reckoning, dominating the minds and wills of all."
In the Lord of the Rings, we know these rings are not to be trusted, but no one really knows that now. In fact, Galadriel believes the rings can be used for good. They even end up saving the elven capital of Lindon from an event known as the Fading, which was an encroaching darkness that jeopardized their power of immortality. When we fast forward to the finale, the elven city of Eregion, the site of the Great Forge used to create the rings, is under siege by Adar, a name in Sindarin which means father. Adar considers himself the father of these orcs, often calling them his children. Sauron represents a threat to Adar and his orcs, and he wants to control all beings of Middle-earth, including the orcs, and has no regard for their well-being. We'll even see him randomly kill orcs for no reason. In fact, Adar and Sauron's feud goes way back when Adar and the orcs killed the Dark Lord because of their differing visions for the future. Adar wants to live in peace with the orcs, while Sauron wants to use them in his quest to dominate all of Middle-earth. We'll even see Adar give Galadriel back Nenya, her elven ring with healing powers that he took from Elrond. This is a token of peace between their two peoples.
Let this ring heal the rift between elf and orc.
I thought it was pretty cool that while he wore this ring, he turned to his normal form, although we never get his elven name he took before Adar. It's both tragic and ironic that he'll die the same way he killed Sauron years ago at the hands of his own men, his last words being children. We never get an explicit answer as to why the orcs turn on Adar, but knowing how good Sauron is at manipulation, he could easily point to how Adar wanted to make friends with their enemies the elves, or how he had total disregard for their lives in the Battle of Eregion. By the end of Season 2, Sauron has killed the great Celebrimbor, who in his dying breath foreshadows Frodo's triumph over him at the end of the Third Age.
I foresee one alone shall prove your utter ruin!
But before his death, Galadriel was able to collect the 9 rings of men and escape before being tracked down by the Dark Lord. These two have a complicated history, where Galadriel developed feelings for him while he was under the guise of Halbrand. It's all the more awkward because this is the guy that killed her beloved brother. And in their final duel, Sauron reiterates how Galadriel would have made a great partner and queen in his quest to dominate Middle-earth. Now, Galadriel fights back, but is no match for Sauron's power. He's able to take the rings of men from her, which likely means Season 3 will focus on him continuing his deception and giving the rings to weak men who are easy to control. If you remember, it was Celebrimbor who initially said they should never make rings for men, as men are the most weak-minded, covetous, and prone to fall prey to its power. Galadriel, however, is able to escape with her elven ring by falling off the side of the cliff. Her wounds are grave, and she will die if Elrond does not put on the ring to heal her. Elrond knows that once he puts on this ring, he would be giving part of himself to Sauron.
In choosing to wear those rings, you have all chosen to become his collaborators.
But his love for Galadriel is too much, and he saves her anyway. This breaks his promise to her in Episode 4, where he said he would put the defeat of Sauron before even her.
Defeating Sauron will come first, even before you.
There are 2 other things I should mention. The first is the burning of Celebrimbor's scrolls, which are a detailed recounting of his process on making the rings. With them destroyed, no further rings can be made. Then there's the image of Sauron holding Feanor's hammer. Feanor was Celebrimbor's father, who Celebrimbor really tried to live up to. Sauron holding this hammer suggests he's on his way to forge the One Ring. This is the master ring he forged in secret to bind all the rings together. It's also the ring Frodo will take on his journey to Mount Doom. With Eregion destroyed, King Gil-galad must decide the next course of action: the shield or the sword, defense or offense. The final shot sees him taking out his sword to a cheering crowd, so I think we can bet the elves will be taking the battle to Sauron. Halfway across Middle-earth, in its largest region, is the land of Rhûn. This is where we find Nori and the Stranger this season. The Stranger is on his quest to discover who he is and his purpose, being drawn toward this constellation, and the culmination of his journey has brought him before a man known as the Dark Wizard. That's not his real name, but the name given to him by the locals. We actually don't know who this Dark Wizard is, but he's likely one of the 5 Istari, a group sent to Middle-earth by the Valar to aid the Free Peoples against the threat of Sauron. The leading theory is that this is either a younger Saruman who would go on to join Sauron in the Third Age, or one of the 2 blue wizards, Alatar and Palando. With us later finding out the Stranger is Gandalf, I think it makes more narrative sense the Dark Wizard is Sauron. Sauron and Gandalf have a history, and Sauron was also the first sent to Earth and thus would be there before Gandalf. However, there are some other plot holes we'd have to get through in order for this to really work. The Dark Wizard wants the Stranger to join him as successors to Sauron, and when he refuses this request, Gandalf uses all his power to save his friends. It's this act of courage and defiance against evil that rewards him his staff and name. That constellation he's been seeing for 2 seasons is a symbol guiding him to his staff, and he remembers his name when members of the Stores give him the name Grand Elf. Now, they've never seen an elf before, so they don't know any better. The Stores, with their homes destroyed, leave for their first migration. Unlike the Harfoots, who are migratory, the Stores built homes into the side of these caves and stayed in one place, so this may be a precursor to the Hobbit holes we'll see years later. Nori talks about how she has to go down her path and Gandalf his, so it's very possible this is the end of her story as we continue on with Gandalf in Season 3. Meeting back with Tom Bombadil, Gandalf choosing friendship over power was a test of sorts, and one that allowed him to discover his identity. We don't know if he'll stay with Tom, but certainly Tom will help him discover his purpose in Middle-earth. Now, there are 2 loose threads here, the Dark Wizard and the Gaudrum. The Dark Wizard told Gandalf to seek him out when he comes to his senses, so another confrontation between these 2 is likely. Then there's the Dark Wizard's betrayal of the Gaudrum. The name in Sindarin means machine people, which may refer to how they dress or perhaps what's underneath their masks. In episode 204, the Gaudrum taunt the Stores by saying they will find out what's underneath their masks if they defy the Dark Wizard. This could be linked to their curse, a curse the Dark Wizard was supposed to lift from their people if they captured Nori and Poppy. The Dark Wizard goes back on his word, so they may still have a part to play in Season 3. There's also a huge setup for the dwarves going into next season. In the finale, King Durin III dies at the hands of a Balrog living within the veins of the mountain. It could very well be this is the same Balrog Gandalf fights in the Fellowship of the Ring. Over the course of the season, the ring's power takes hold of King Durin as he obsesses over wealth, causing friction with his son, Prince Durin IV. In a last heroic effort, King Durin takes off his ring, asks for his son's forgiveness, and attacks the Balrog before the vein is cut off. We never see King Durin die, but all the other dwarves consider him dead. In fact, there are several problems Durin IV will have to face now that he is the presumptive king, and the first of which are other claims to the throne. Both his brother and other dwarven lords have started gathering support for their claims. Then there's the vast tributes the other lords were forced to pay when Durin III was in charge. It seems they want to collect. So there are not a lot of people happy with the way things are currently going. The big question is, will Durin IV have to resort to using the rings to keep everything together? He saw what it did to his father, so something really bad will need to happen for him to use them. The final storyline this season revolves around Numenor. Queen Muriel's journey to Middle-earth to fight against Adar was a crippling defeat, and many, including her cousin Ar-Pharazôn, uses this and other devious tactics to dethrone her and take power. The killing blow for Muriel's rule was the discovery of her use of the Palantir. Ar-Pharazôn argues the queen used this elven artifact to lead their men to their deaths, and that their people should not be guided by a queen who follows elven sorcery. This is rich considering Pharazôn will later use the Palantir himself, in which he sees a vision of flames and Halbrand's face, hinting at the impending doom of Numenor by the Great Wave, something Muriel saw in Season 1. Muriel will let her fate be decided by something known as a trial by abyss, where she's basically put into this pond by the sea and sucked sucked up by a monster. If she survives, it is proof that the gods have chosen her to rule, and that's exactly what happens. But Pharazôn will not let go of his power and undertakes a coup, rounding up all the faithful followers of Miriel, stating that it was not the Valar who helped her survive the monster, but Sauron himself. Caught in the middle is Eärien, who is supportive of Pharazôn, but now must hide her father, who is faithful to the queen. He's able to say his goodbye to Miriel and is given the blade Narsil. This is the blade Elendil will use in the war against Sauron, which his son Isildur will use to cut the One Ring from Sauron's hand. The sword would later be reforged and become Aragorn's. Miriel tells him to flee and to reclaim his lordship, and the only real bit of information we get on where he's going is to his youngest son Anarion, who hasn't yet been seen in the show. It is said he is somewhere on Numenor's west coast. At the same time, Pharazôn's son Kemen has traveled across the Great Sea to the city of Pelargir with the task of creating a fortress for its soldiers. And he is a real dick, walking around like he's superior to everyone else. He demands lumber in exchange for the locals to stay, which isn't going to go over well with the nearby Ents our heroes made friends with. Kemen thought Isildur died in battle, and a lot has changed since last they met. Long story short, Isildur gets on a boat back to Numenor while his new love must stay back with her fiancé. No doubt we'll see him linking up with his sister, father, and brother back in Numenor. With the rings now forged, it looks like Season 3 will shift more towards Sauron's hold over the various races of Middle-earth. I feel that the kingdoms of men will play a much larger role next season as an even greater war builds. But what did you think of Season 2 of the Rings of Power? Was it a step up from Season 1, and what do you think will happen in Season 2? Let me know your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, be sure to like and subscribe, and for more bad takes you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ThinkStoryYT. Until next time, remember, Daddy loves you very much.